Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is author, adventurer, entrepreneur G Michael Hopf. He's the author of 21 books set post-apocalypse. Remarkably, each one is free of any zombies. But they are all big on adventure, struggle, and exploration of the human condition. His successes are all his own. The novels are published outside of the traditional system, and with sales far exceeding 1 million books, that gamble was bold, and it has paid off handsomely. That boldness showed up when, as a sharp kid from Southern Maryland with good grades who could have gone to a number of schools, he enlisted in the Marine Corps and went right to Marine combat training and infantry school. He enlisted in part to see the world, and see the world he did, traveling to the West Coast for the first time when he was sent to Camp Pendleton, then to Okinawa, before he was deployed to Saudi Arabia in 1990 to fight Saddam Hussein's forces that had taken Kuwait. So by the end of his 6-year enlistment, he had conducted missions in Okinawa, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, and had spent over a third of his time forwardly deployed. Following the Marines, he spent time as a commercial diver in the oil fields of the Gulf of Mexico, and then came out of the water to work for years in executive protection before deciding to put all that great experience to use in his life's true calling as a writer. Now, stories like this are pretty remarkable, and we love to bring them to you, and if you like us doing it, I'm going to ask that you support the Break It Down Show by hitting that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you use, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever, and give us a 5-star rating, and write us a little review. I'm not asking you to write 21 books, maybe just 21 words, to help shine a digital light to help others find us and our guests. That'd be spectacular, and we'd really appreciate it. Also want to remind you that Pete is doing the Coronado SEAL Memorial Swim on Saturday, September 21. The event benefits the families of naval special warfare operators who've made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country and our freedom. This organization and the families in it deserve our support, so we give it, and we hope you do too. You'll find them at SEALVeteransFoundation.org. Once again, that is SEALVeteransFoundation.org. Visit the website and just see what they're about, and donate a few bucks if you can. G Michael Hopf sat down with fellow Marines Brian Dix, who we featured last week, and our co-producer co-host Scott Huesing, along with old Pedro, to talk about the process, how his service informs his subject matter, how he blazed a trail by going rogue outside the publishing system before that move became cool, and how that freedom has paid off for him. You're going to love what he has to say, and we hope you'll love his books too. Here's our special guest today, G Michael Hopf.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is G Michael Hopf, and you're on the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
It's actually a full house. I'm actually on the ambient mic. I got Scott here with me. Brian, our last guest, he's hosting and also co-hosting now, so thank you so much for that. And I want to make sure I give Scott a chance to talk about our new partnership between the Break It Down Show and Save the Brave. So I'm going to shut up and let him do that.
Yeah, really proud to partner with the Break It Down Show with Save the Brave, certified 501c3 veteran nonprofit, helping veterans with post-traumatic stress through outreach programs and really just bringing them together to connect in a safe environment through our donors and sponsors. If you want to find out more, go to savethebrave.org. Online, you can find ways to donate, volunteer your time and services. Savethebrave.org. Great to be a part of the Break It Down Show and partner. We should have been doing this years ago, but sometimes in everything we do, things right in front of us, we walk right past them. So
one of the reasons why I did this is because we're always so cautious about charities. And so now you know a guy that directly works with a charity, and I'm hoping that you all trust me, trust Scott, know that we're doing our damnedest with our own time, our own money, our own things to try to help these people out and give them a chance at something better. So, yeah, support us. Monthly subscriptions are fine. Sharing the show is great, too. Anyhow, so enough about that. Let's get on with what we're doing here with Jeff.
Yeah. So, hey, great to have you on this show. Again, I'm always talking about the power of human connection and the value of social media. And again, we were introduced online. I think we became friends on Facebook because Jeff is a fellow Marine. He's a fellow author, best-selling author, artist, and we're sitting here with Brian, who's an artist and a fellow Marine as well. But this connection that we have. And if you take it, you can take it lightly because there's a lot of fluff out there and stuff you don't want to sink your teeth into on the internet. But when you make a connection like this, and we've been pen pals, and you've supported my book, and I support everything you do, and just to share that is essential to be successful in the veteran space. And you are by far more successful than me, because tell everybody a little bit how you guys started writing. And what is it, 30 books now?
30 books in now, right? Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me on the show. And Brian, thanks for hosting us here at the house. This is
Absolutely.
Awesome. House is beautiful.
Thank you.
But going back, the first thing you were talking about, like the connection, the Marine Corps, and even just veterans in general, there's like a fraternity there. But I know kind of in the Marine Corps, it's just more special. My dad was a Marine. He told me that. It was one of the things he told me before I went in. He goes, you'll never be with a group of guys that you'll have a connection with and a rapport. No matter where you can be, you can run into somebody. The instant you find they're a Marine, you kind of know each other. And you'll be talking about stuff. It's fascinating. And I see it all the time. But in going back, like when you and I connected, I'm always wanting to help a fellow veteran. Also, if a fellow artist or say someone who wants to write or learn how to write and get into that space that I'm in, I'm always open to that because I don't there's no competition in that. Books are a consumable, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not like a toaster. It's not like you're going to write one book and that's the sacred book that everyone has to buy. It's content that people consume. Same thing with music, right? So I like collaborations. I like working with people. I want to see you be as successful as me or even greater. I'm totally for that. And so I always help people. And specifically, I have a warm heart to veterans and Marines if they're wanting to get into the space. Absolutely want to help them. There was a guy that was in my unit in 1-1. He didn't know I was writing. He found out I was writing, found out it was, Sergeant Hopf. And so he contacted me via social media. Next thing we're on the phone. He was wanting to write a book. And so I walked him through the entire process of how to self-publish. I didn't help him write his book, but I helped him through the process. And now he's got 5 books.
What's his name?
Doug Hogan.
Doug Hogan, if you're listening, buddy, congrats.
Yeah, and come on the show. He'd love to.
But he's just a great guy, but I just love to help those. And I did the same thing with my best friend, Travis. He and I were in first tanks and then 1-1 together, same thing. Walked him through the process, and now he's getting ready to release his second book called The Last Marine.
Well, you're saying walk through the process. It's not an easy process.
No, it's not,
very thorough.
Yes, it's very thorough. It's not easy, but once you know it, then it becomes easy. It's like anything in life, right? So it's so daunting when you look at just the process of self-publishing and the process of understanding once you've got your manuscript, what do you do then? Because trying to get a traditionally published book is very difficult, right? Well, and so right now we're kind of living in a revolution of publishing right now. And so if you can't go the traditional route, you can go the self-published route. But even then, it's just very daunting. What do you do? What's your next step? How do you... And so I just kind of sit down with these guys and just this is what you do. And they just kind of follow through. And I open myself up. I don't charge anybody. It's like call me, email me, whatever, and let them do it.
This is an important thing. One, very NCO like to go, here is the process to do this impossible thing. Because there are steps. And these ones here are motherfuckers. But you just slow down here and break this into smaller steps. Super, that's great leadership. But also, one of the things I counsel people on is whatever it is you want to do, whether you're transitioning or you're a young student trying to get somewhere else, is find a mentor. So talk a little bit about when people reach out to you, what is your mindset? Because it's like asking a pretty girl out or asking a pretty guy out or whatever it's going to be. You're afraid of the rejection. It's like, let that person say no. Give them the chance. So talk about your mindset as someone who gets to mentor a lot of people.
Well, I remember my dad was always a good teacher for me. And one important lesson he kind of put in my head is never be afraid to fail, which I think is an important lesson. Because I think fear will stop people from ever, or fear of failure will stop people from ever doing anything, right? And so he told me it's okay to fail, but understand, then kind of diagnose why did you fail, what happened, and so forth. And so that never stopped me. Then when I was getting into when I first wrote The End, I was fortunate. I had an agent who I had ultimately fired. I then decided to like not go the mainstream route and just self-published it. And then the book took off. And then I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of like, oh, the book's succeeding right now. Now I'm like really out of my element because I've never done this before. So I just went to like this concept of modeling. So what I did is I started looking at other authors who were successful. And then I found out where they were and I just started emailing people.
Yeah.
Just knocking on doors kind of thing, right? Electronically. And I just, again, not afraid of them to tell me no. Until eventually one guy, Doug Richards, New York Times bestseller, lives in Carmel Valley, great guy, not a vet, but a great guy. He's like, oh, he and I were competing in the Amazon ranks. He goes, oh yeah, I've seen you on there. And so he replied, hey, let's go sit down and have lunch. I'll tell you all about it.
No, the amazing thing is that you had an agent and you fired the agent when people are clawing at doors wishing that they had one.
That's because I'm a control freak, but well, she was great and I learned a lot, but she was wanting to change kind of the integrity of the book.
Was she an editor also?
Yeah. And I had some beta readers at the time and everyone seemed to love the story. Clearly it needed to be cleaned up. I understand that from an editorial process. But from the story process, she wanted to make some alterations that I wasn't comfortable with. And so that's why I just terminated her. And then, which everyone thought I was crazy, hit self-publish, and then it took off on its own.
Well, I think it's important, too, for listeners, especially writers that want to get into this traditional, and I don't say this because I love my publisher and in that traditional stream, but doesn't necessarily mean better. It's just a route to go where you get certain things, but you also lose some control. And when you self-publish, you can attest to this in so many ways, is you gain some control, but you also lose some of the other things that the traditional world has in their network of their marketing, their publicity, their contacts, which have been established for, in my case, like 70 plus years with my publisher at Regnery, and then you decide to self-publish. So it's a balance, right? And you just have to decide what's a better use of your time. Do you want to waste, or spend, I should say, not waste, 6 months looking for an agent that can sell your book to the traditional route? Or do you want to use those 6 months and ask guys like you and others who are successful how to drop this and self-publish it, where you get more of the proceeds as well?
Well, yeah, you get more proceeds and you get more control over self-publishing. But go back to that story where I eventually, that book got picked up by Penguin Random House. But now I was in control. Mm-hmm. And the contract was far different than if I was just shopping it as a...
Because you were your own agent.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's fascinating. Eventually, they came knocking on my door and they wanted to buy the book plus 3 more. Mm. And the deal was completely different. If I was coming in as a newbie, they'd be like, what kind of leverage did I have? I didn't have any proof that I could sell, right? That the book would have any kind of reach. But then once they saw the reach, it was funny when I got the call from it was an imprint of Penguin called Plume. Got a call from editorial director. First he emailed me, and then we exchanged numbers, then he called me. And I was like, my first question was like, how did you even find me, right? He goes, we actually scour, this is his answer, we scour the Amazon product pages and the Amazon bestseller list looking for people that aren't represented. And see if this isn't a fluke, they watch it over a period of time. My book was like consistently selling really good for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, which meant it had a natural organic following. People were, it wasn't because of promotions. It wasn't because like people were literally buying it, and just kind of the grassroots effort, the way the algorithms were working inside of Amazon search engine, and then blogs and Goodreads, everyone was talking about it. So it kind of taken on this viral thing. And I was shocked by that. So there's 2 routes to mainstream publishing. You can get an agent, go that route, or you do really well in self-publishing that they'll pick you up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then you have the control over the contract, because now you've proven that you can sell, that your books can sell. And
it's not about the writing, is it? It's about the what?
Oh, it's all about the dollars before
them. But the selling of books, they don't. Yeah, they just want to sell books.
They knew that I already had a fan base. I already had a reader base. So any subsequent meant sales for them. It was a no-brainer.
Yeah. And we talk about selling books and being a best-selling author a lot, and we've had a lot of great authors on the show. Oh, yeah. But just so everyone knows, and I don't know if I've said this or not, but you don't get rich selling books. I mean, unless your name ends in Tom Clancy or James Patterson, maybe.
You have to write a few books before
you get.
Can you make a nice living from it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you do the work.
Yeah, you got to do the work. But I mean, so you can make a really nice living.
Yeah.
Writing today. Yeah. You can. But you have to be consistent. You have to have quality. But then you also you do have to put out a lot of content. That's why I'm up to 30 books now. So I'm pretty prolific.
Well, and one of the things when I talk to writers, because you learn from having all you guys on, is you have to be salesman of the year for your own brand every year.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I know, like, I'm sure you're out there hustling yourself, right? So you have a mainstream publisher, but still, I found this when I was under the Plume Penguin umbrella. I got to sign a publicist, but still at the same time, they give a very small budget because I'm not in the top 1% of the 1%, right?
Right.
So you're not Stephen King, you're not Joanne Rowling, you get a very small budget, and then once that's spent, the rest of the marketing promotions is up to the author himself.
Absolutely.
To do. Yeah, so you have to hustle.
Again, you count on someone else to do the work for you. You can expect what the product's going to be. So that comes back to in either self-publishing and having a strict work ethic and putting yourself out there and understanding that you could write the best sci-fi or nonfiction memoir or whatever it is, but if you're not willing to promote it and share the story, and I don't necessarily ever use the word hustle, but yeah, you have to hustle a little bit. You have to know the game and be good at the rules. But if you write the best book and you don't tell people about it, if you write the best song, the best melody, and you don't tell people about it or don't play it or aren't willing for people to listen or read it, it'll never be heard.
And the most difficult thing that I see from veterans is self-promotion, because there's such a degree of humility that they
to a fault
that it's detrimental to their careers.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And
well, what's your key? How do you get yourself out
I changed the focus of, I believe in just kind of not trying to sound hokey, but I believe in kind of the language that I use and the talk I have inside my head. Like, I really believe in my self-talk and and so I changed the way I approached writing, and I decided instead of making it a hobby, I changed it like I made it like this. It's a career. This is a job. It's a business.
We had a great conversation when I was scheduling him for the show, and I asked him this same question. Is a time of day good for you? I'm like, do you have like a job or something? He goes, no, I'm a writer. I said, I was just asking because I get asked that question too. Like, oh, so, how's that little writing thing going for you, man? You mean my job? You mean the thing I get paid for, where people ask me and send me checks to write stuff for them, or op-eds or opinion or expert commentary? Yeah, it's work.
Yeah, absolutely, it's work.
And there's not a 9 to 5. You're constantly working all day long. There's travel involved. There's research involved. That's all part of the work. And you could call it work, but it's fun. Since I retired and have putting in more hours than I probably ever did on active duty, I just enjoy it that much more because it's absolutely what I love to do. I love sharing stories, and to promote a book or a piece of work, I think, is important. And Marines or veterans especially, there's always gonna be that one fucking guy that will drop some poison in the water on social media or something and make you feel like you're doing it all for yourself, as if you are getting rich off sharing the story. Those are rare, and I never drink the poison water. You just can't. But I think it's always important for people that are getting into the entertainment industry to realize, like, you're not going to please everybody, and you shouldn't. But if you're not willing to put that out there, if you're not willing to share your art, then it'll never be discovered. And there's a marketing and promotion piece of that in everything we do. And you're a fool if you don't think so.
Yeah, I've never bought into the whole starving artist concept. I don't get that. It's like, why even do it then? What are you doing it for?
To starve?
Yeah, well, you heard about the starving artist. You've heard about that. I'm going to start.
Or the brooding alcoholic in his basement who's writing the best novel. Who's selling that book?
It's just some phony kind of romanticized version of what an artist would be, and it's just stupid to me. So I structure it like a business, and because I want it to be successful, I want to do well. This is my not just what I do for a living, but I do like the lifestyle of it, like without a doubt. Like, I'm always working, but then I can always choose to have time, and just I can move. My schedule's more flexible.
When you're fucking off, do you ever feel like, I should be writing or working? Like,
yeah, but I'm always working now. But I'm actually, when you said that, I'm actually always working. I'm always thinking. I'm always processing, whether it's the marketing, promotion, just the stories I'm working on, and just the characters, and just like the conversations we're having now. I will pull things from these things, how people talk, inflections, how they might manage their body language, and that I incorporate into books, into characters. And after having 30 books, I need characters. I need to know how people talk and their mannerisms.
It's 24/7. Not everyone is like Hemingway, who would get up in the morning and write until noon every day, then just take the afternoon off.
But I guarantee he was still working, though.
Absolutely.
He was always working. he was drinking and working. It was always
Would you ever go to the office or all boozed up and start work? No. Have you ever written drunk?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the worst fucking writing, isn't it?
No.
I don't know.
There have been times.
I don't know. I disagree. I've actually done pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not drinking hard enough then, fucker.
Not Hemingway. Not Hemingway.
Sliding some shots.
Oh, yeah.
Start potting harder.
Listen.
I Ubered down here. I'm totally up for the whiskey, man.
Back in D.C., there was a wonderful Italian restaurant. If the pasta was good, a couple glasses Chianti, I went back to my office. I'd write till 2 in the morning. It's the best stuff I ever had.
Yeah, I wake up the next day and I'm like, what the fuck did I write, man? What did I? Because I never went to school for writing or any of that. It just came naturally. But
do you get something from that work though? Like Quint in Jaws, right? When Robert does that whole monologue talking about the sharks and the Indy and all that, right? He was hammered the first time he tried it, and it was garbage.
Yeah.
But then he knew what to do, and then he delivers what appears to be a drunken, monologue, but it's money.
Yeah, there's probably some utility. I think if nothing else, an idea or a concept in a drunken stupor could be of value. But
yeah, and I use that too. I use on my phone. I use the notes thing. I'm constantly leaving voice memos to myself because again, I'll be out drinking or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. Or I'll see something. I
would never call a bottle of scotch a muse.
But let me ask you. So you're talking about filling up your well with characters, and it's not just characters. It's how the person holds their. You see something. Give us some specific examples of what that looks like in your day-to-day life when you I don't know, when you go to Ralph's and you're like, look how that guy did this or whatever. What are some of those specific things?
Well, anything. Like I remember I had some friends over and there was a friend across from the island we have in our kitchen and she was asking me questions. The way she was playing with her hair, asking, she kept flipping it kind of back and forth and tucking it. I was just watching her and she finally goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm watching your mannerisms because there was a female character I was having.
I'm stalking you.
Yeah.
I'm a dirty old man.
And when I was watching her, I was like, I'm just like what you're doing. Like it's interesting because she's still like having the conversation with me, looking at me, but she keeps like flicking her hair and doing all this stuff with it. And so I was like, so I used that, incorporated it to when this one female character was talking to this man, and I was like, she was playing with her hair and doing this. It wasn't in a nervous fashion. I think it's like I'd almost say it's like a tick. It's not like a tick is some kind of. It's not like something along that lines, like a Tourette's. Yeah, but then I eventually noticed she does that a lot. So again, I don't think it's a nervous kind of thing. I think it's more
idiosyncracy.
That's just what she does. Yeah. So
those are important to character development, and whether they're real or fictional. What's that one thing? If there's writers out there listening, like what's the one thing? Oh, like you're a pilot and you're afraid of heights, like that. Like what is that one thing that with the hair flicking or that is, I think, what draws me into books. And on book 30, 7 days. Is that number 30? 7 days.
That's number 30. Yeah,
number 30.
That's 28 of novels, and then I also have 2 children's books. That's why I go by the G Michael. I have 2 children's books that are under Jeffrey Hopf, and so I didn't want to blur the lines.
Any other aliases we should know about? FBI listening, tuning in.
Well, that is under another pen name. But
any other pen names?
They're no good at their pen names, right?
We're just trying to trip him up, man.
I think Anne Rice had them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, neither confirm nor deny.
Well, because after this episode of the Break It Down show, he's going over to Comic-Con to hang out. What's your intent?
I'm just going to walk around and check people out.
Is people watching?
Yeah, totally.
You give a shit about about the people that are there.
Yeah, I want to go check it out. I think I've gone on a Comic-Con. I actually spoke there once a few years ago. But I think it's a fun environment. Like, there's a lot of people. I always say, my wife and I joke that it's kind of like, they call Disneyland the happiest place on earth. But I swear, like Comic-Con, like everyone goes down there. They're just having a nice time. No one's judging. Everyone's just they're all dressed out, whatever. It's super fun. Like I think it's a really cool thing for San Diego. I know it causes traffic and it's a pain in the butt for a lot, but for the most part, I think it's really good for the city.
I do too. I love the people watching wherever I go. And
this is the time for people watching in San Diego.
Yeah,
it's iconic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You got the races going on up at Del Mar.
Yep.
You've got the big hat ladies, doing their thing, and jockeys.
Yesterday was opening at
Del Mar. We love that place.
But the crowd here for Comic-Con is like no other. They're just polite. It's like they all just came out of the library. You know,
Yeah, it grew out of a group of misfits that wanted to get together and have this thing, and it just boomed. Because the majority are the misfits that don't fit in, like a bunch of Marines, Army vets, So
I bet there are a lot of jarheads down there.
Oh my God, could imagine. So, from book one, in transitioning from the Marine Corps, because there are a lot of Marine writers. There's a lot of great ones we know, and we'll just, there's plenty of veteran writers, I should say, but we know a lot, guys like Bing West and Carl Marlantis and you, and, it's a pretty small niche, I think, and to be introduced to all those guys, and they share willingly within the network, and we've benefited from that immensely. And there's others that don't share so much. We've talked about that, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but that happens too. And it's that fear of someone stealing, your fame or whatever it is that makes you happy. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that. I just love connecting people. And we're this small segment that transition from the military, and you do this thing. And the message here is that if you want to do this, if you want to become an artist or a musician or an actor, you can do it. And there's 4 people sitting right here in this room. You can find us online at the Break It Down Show or Echo and Ramadi or
GMichaelHopf.com.
GMichaelHopf.com or BrianDix.com, DIX. And give us a call and we'll help you. But you have to do the work. And the fact is, you can do it. And I think a lot of guys, I never thought I'd be sitting here today. I never thought I'd be hanging out with guys like you. And when you grow up in an environment where you're kind of isolated and in the Marine Corps insulated to your own tribe, I think that's the important message is if people are listening, if guys are talking about this, and this isn't a self-help podcast, but this is a cool byproduct of everything we've done and the ability to share. How important is that for you? And at what stage did you realize, fuck, man, I got to give back?
Right after the first book took off, it was right then, because I was like, it's happening. And I was working as a diver at the time. And I told my wife, I was like, I have to quit my job in order to get the second book. I saw opportunity. The door was open. First book was crushing. It's before Penguin called. And I was like, I've got to get a second book out. I can't wait 18 months to write. Like, I need to get on this now. She's like, I don't know. I was like, then I got smart. So I showed her a spreadsheet of what I was going to make in the first. She's like, oh.
No.
Okay.
What are you doing? Get to work.
Exactly. That's pretty much what it was. So I quit diving and I just hammered out the sequel in 4 months. And right before I was done is when the call came from Penguin. But then when that happened, that kind of, there was definitely validation then when you get a publisher, a big publisher, it's validation that you've done something, right? I know it's not that it's not critical to be successful as a writer today, but it does add some validity, I think, because now people are like, oh, you're a real writer.
I think it depends on what you go into it wanting to do or get out of it.
Yeah, but I tell you, from an ego perspective, it felt good to get picked up by the publisher. But in the long road of it, the long concept, it wasn't necessary for my success, by the way. Anyway, once that was happening, I remember what Doug did for me and some other people helped out. I told my wife, I was like, I think it's important that I need to do that. Like, I managed to get here in a really quick amount of time. And I can help some people through those steps. And that's when I decided I was going to just start doing it. So anytime I've been interviewed or anytime anyone contacts me, I always make it a point to respond back to people. And I get emails every week about someone asking me some little question about how to do this or that or whatever. And I always make a point of replying back.
Majority veterans?
No, it's actually kind of a mixed bag. Some people just, they'll hear me because I've done other just podcasts and radio shows, and there'll be self-help shows or whatever they are, people talking about whatever. And so I open it up to anybody, by the way.
Well, you appealed because you don't necessarily write about just military stuff like me, like my first book, and that's it. Not even 18 months out. It's still fresh, but it's about military. I'm from the military. You've crossed so many different demographics with the span of work. You must get it from.
I get it across the board, and I'm open to
every corner around the world.
Yeah, and I'm open to anybody because I think it's important. I think it's critical to give back. Actually, I think it's very important.
Now, the amazing thing is that every veteran's got a good story, and not all veterans have a good voice. not only do you have a good voice, but you now have 30 stories that you've told, which is amazing. It's an amazing amount of work.
And not every veteran is a good writer. But if you apply yourself with the fundamentals, it's all math. You talked about using a formula and a method. You don't have to be the greatest writer or be formally trained and go to Columbia. Columbia is great, don't get me wrong. A lot of great writers come out of that school. But if you apply the formula and do the work, just like a 5-paragraph order, the mission will be that much more successful to these young guys. And then aligning yourself with, every benefit, every success I've had in life is because I surround myself with great people sitting right here today. And if guys can reach out, I think that's important. It's like, don't be afraid. Hey, there may be a guy that reaches out and he wants some help, and I'll say yes sometimes, or I say, no, I can't help you with this. The worst I can do is say no, but I, like you, always try and respond.
Yeah, like I just got a contact from a guy named Mark Ricks. He was with 3-1 Stapleton. Like, he emailed me a couple questions, and I was like, I'd rather just go on the phone because I can cover so much more information in a quick phone call versus like typing out. I was like, I'm going to get carpal tunnel syndrome, like writing this all out to you. So he's like, here's my phone number. He goes, you really give me your phone number? I'm like, yeah, just call me. It's like, what are you going to do? You stalk me? It's like, I'm not worried about it. So he called me and we spent like an hour on the phone. He got all his information, pretty much covered what he needed to do. And then he was able to like finish his books coming out, I think in the next 3 weeks or something like that.
All right. What do you do when the person sends you an email, right? And you can't make heads or tails of what they're saying in the email, and they want to be a writer?
I would probably respond back as, can you be more clear about what you're asking? Like, what do you want?
But I'm sure you've had a few of those.
Well, people will. I had one guy was actually from. Well, my cousin went to Egypt and one of the tour guides, an Egyptian guy, was wanting to write a book. And so all I know is my information was given to this tour guide, and I get this email, and that was just because it was just broken English. I'm like trying to understand what he's trying to say. And so I was trying to reply back. I had a general idea what he was wanting to do. And I tried to reply back. He replied back one other time with a couple other questions, again, just kind of broken English kind of. I think I never heard from him again. I mean, I replied back again, trying to answer as best I could. And I never heard back from him again. I have no idea whether he did anything.
You get a little, what's the craziest approach you've gotten? In person or?
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
What's the craziest approach you've gotten? In person or online?
How do you define crazy?
All right, I'll give you an example. Recently, while traveling, someone recognized me at a bar at an airport and said, "I'm a writer too." I says, "Oh, great! When was your book published?" And they said, "Oh, well, I haven't been published yet, so I'm not trying to sound elitist, but I'm like, well, then you're a writer, like you're an author, like I guess I don't know what the shades of gray are, but was not published yet." And then proceeds to delve into her carry-on bag and whip out like 7 spiral-bound notebooks and request all this information. And I automatically felt the block click on the, like, this is happening. It was, single ruled. And, oh, I'm a writer. Great. Like, I'm waiting to see the head that was pulled out of the bag after that or something that made it through a security checkpoint. But anything crazy like that ever happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten...
Dull's fine, too.
What's that?
Dull's fine, too, itself.
I mean, I've gotten, like, people, like, they'll message me, like, on social media, and they'll ask some questions. And then I swear it's like the reverse dick pic. And then I'll say, and they're women, and I get a picture of breasts. I'm like, okay.
Do you share those?
Are those in the book?
They're not, I'm trying to see.
That's in the illustrated version. That's the coloring book version.
That's in your, provocative erotica novels.
When was this picture taken on your author bio?
4 years ago.
4 years ago? You look a little different. You look a little more hip now today. So I'm asking because you do get a little of the weird when you put yourself out there and you're a public figure-esque, whatever, which I don't consider myself one. But when you get the weird coming on back, especially online, social media, what do you just? Do you ever respond?
No, I mean,
don't
it's kind of weird. I mean, if they get really creepy, then I just block them. I mean, there's people always asking all kinds of questions, but then again, if it's kind of that kind of stuff, then I just block it.
Let's get off of creepy.
I don't focus on that stuff.
Let's talk about, because what's incredible about your writing is that there's such a volume of it, right? And so all the way down to the very beginning, like when someone has writer's block, I mean, that's the common thing. Everybody has it. What do you do, or what have you done to overcome it? How do you get past that blank page?
Exercise. It's funny. Like I'll go out and I'll just put on a pack and just go for a nice hump. Just go hike somewhere. Go up in the mountains and just clear my head.
Did you know you were going to?
It helps. It's funny how quickly that helps. By the way,
yeah.
I'll be a half an hour on the trail just hiking and just no phone, no tech, just sitting there. And just stuff, I break it, it comes to me, I'm start thinking about it, then I just let it flow, keep going, and then I just rush back and then start hammering out.
And then you have all these ideas. Obviously, at some point, you accepted that you're not going to run out of ideas anytime soon. Talk about that moment or that era of your time where you're like, actually, I'm just going to keep doing this because I'm not going to run out of ideas.
No, I want to write, I have this goal of writing 100 books in my life. I want to write 100 novels.
What about a screenplay?
Absolutely. Actually, that's funny you mentioned that. I think it's was I talking to you about this? Not sure. That's yes. I swear it's my natural, I know it's like my natural organic progression. I want to get into movie making. And I'm having the same kind of thoughts like I did when I first wrote my first book. And I'm kind of a guy, like when I have an idea, I just start working toward that goal. I don't take the time, and maybe I should, to like gather all the information. I kind of like run toward it. I make mistakes along the way, but I don't sit and ponder and overanalyze stuff. So I'm actually already starting to make some inroads and talk to people, but I'm not even adapting my own material. Like I have other ideas and concepts and outlines that would actually translate better to the screen versus translate into the written word. So I definitely see me going into filmmaking sometime in the future. Near future, probably more than far future. It's just, but I'll still continue to write and put out that kind of content, but I might get into just producing.
Make sure it has good music.
It's a different medium, too.
I agree. Every great movie has great music.
It's all about the underscoring. Absolutely.
Oh, write a screenplay. It's such a different medium than writing a poem or a short story or an op-ed or a novel or a memoir. To do that, it's like asking a musician to play a different instrument. Like there's a whole different feel, a whole different mechanic to it. Or
the skill set is entirely different.
Absolutely. Or an artist who does watercolor to say, oh, can you draw me this? Like I don't even know how to hold a pencil.
Because the author creates the imagery, and it's between the author and the reader. On the screen, it's someone different. There's also director intent and producer's intent.
Absolutely,
and all the technical side that they're able to produce.
I want to ask you guys, since we're in this space, this is a great place to explore, not ignore it. To explore is like in screenwriting, Jeff. Not you, Jeff, but Jeff Calhoun. He's the master of this, right? And you guys should definitely get his book, A Guide for Every Screenwriter. And that's just a free plug because this book is awesome. But he talks about writing less, like leaving room for the director to direct and establishing things. You're verbose. You write words like crazy. You know, you get in there and really do it. Can you get really parsimonious with the words and just put the minimum in there?
I don't know. You brought up a good point. When I was up in West Hollywood a couple years ago, I was in talks about having the end was going to be adapted. And so this one producer we're talking about it. And he asked, because they're trying to save money, if I would write the screenplay. And I said, no, I wouldn't want it. Like, I don't know how to write a screenplay.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, if the book ever was adapted and there's one shot for it to be successful, I would love to help out with the screenplay. I love to get the screen credit for that too. But I'd want someone who's experienced writing it. Because also, if you have an experienced screenwriter, that also that will go out, if they have a good name too, that helps in who you can cast. Because actors, like who's writing the screenplay, they'll know if it's actually going to be decent.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I wouldn't mind learning that craft under someone else, like understudy and be there and contribute to it.
I'm interested in it.
But. Absolutely. But me writing it by myself, I just wouldn't feel comfortable with it. Even if I studied doing it, I don't think my mind works like that. I know people have that thing, like, oh, wow, it's writer's right. No, it's not. It's completely different.
It's a whole different skill set.
Absolutely.
Does that work in music? Like, are there genres?
I've been asked to do some scoring. I said, I can't do that. That's an entirely different skill set. People who score for films or television or even commercials, they have like 3 electronic keyboards. They look at something there, and it's a lot of technical aspects about it. That guy, John Williams, is the father, well, close to being the father for film writing. But he was down there on the ground floor hammering it out on the piano first before all the technical advances. Now it's all technical advances. A whole different skill set.
And apparently he had a whole shitload of French horns in the basement with him, too. A lot of French horns.
Well, not to get off the subject, the one interesting thing about John Williams, there's 3 good things. 1, he's a veteran. Served in the Air Force. Number 2, he went to community college, LA City College. And number 3, he went to Juilliard on the GI Bill. Now, there's a good investment on our tax dollars.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Because he brought great movies.
And great movies. He brought great movies to life because of the music.
Couldn't even begin to name all the movies. Like
Just say Star Wars.
All the big ones.
Star Wars, full stop.
But it's a matter of volume, no different than you. You have a large body of work. Once the first one gets adapted, someone's going to say, hey, these look good also.
Yeah.
You've got so many books, I would venture to say, can you name all 30 books you've written? The
I'd have to sit and think about it. Yeah, I could, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
In order of when I wrote them? Yeah, I probably
there's so many books.
Yeah.
Who we had on that's even been that close?
Jim DeFelice is today's guest. He's 50-plus books now.
50-plus books, so. And Jim's local yokel, too, isn't he?
No, he's New York.
He's New York, that's right.
But he's nationwide.
Yeah, he goes all over the place.
He's a monster, though. He's got a lot. Otherwise, there's Kat Connor, who's got 12. So it's like you're number 2. Congratulations.
Jim, if you're listening, buddy.
You could do that by Thursday next week. Yeah.
I'm on your
Just
ass,
hammer it
bro.
out.
I'm coming
He said
for
he
you.
finished the
Coming
series
for you.
in 4 months. I'm like, what?
No, I didn't finish the series. I finished the second book.
The second book of the series. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue a series with previous writings that you've done?
Well, that series by itself has already been completed, but now I've got, if you take away those 2 children's books, I got that series. I've got a trilogy I'm working on right now.
But nothing you want to make a prequel on?
I've thought about a prequel, but what's interesting about I don't want to kind of go off into the weeds here. I'm really known in the apocalyptic space. I have also written some in that space of writing, and people they know my name. When an apocalyptic fiction, people know G Michael Hopf. I took a little kind of jaunt into the Western space, and I actually did fairly well writing Westerns. But not all my fan base went with me, and the reason is this kind of ties into the prequel stuff. All my fan base didn't go with the Westerns because some people don't like Westerns, and the reason is they go, it's in the past. I already know what happens. They like apocalyptic fiction because it's about what if. These are unknown scenarios that I create kind of this reality-based apocalyptic scenarios that people wonder what will happen. So it lets the mind, the imagination kind of go. And so the fan base, if a prequel would be, you already know what's going to happen. So if I did a prequel to my best-selling series, everyone already knows what happens. Now, would some of the fans read it? But some of them, I guarantee not all of them would run off, would jump on it because it wouldn't be as exciting as the, living through, because in the first series, I take you as a reader as the event is unfolding. You're living the event as society's collapsing after super EMPs.
Well, what if a character in the story, if you did an in-between quote, and you came in tangentially off that character?
I've done that, yes. I've done that. And I'm in the publishing house I've opened up, the first 5 books I'm putting out with other writers are writing into that space now. So I've got other authors who are going to write side stories in the New World universe. Yeah. They're not going to be about the characters, but they're going to be creating other characters in other places, wherever around the world, of what they're doing and what's happening after the United States is collapsing.
Who is your base that when you write your novels?
Like the demographic?
Demographics.
Well, I don't have all the information, but what's fascinating is it's almost a 50-50 split, when you look at kind of men versus women, which I found fascinating. I thought it'd be heavier weighted to men, but there's actually a high, it's much higher than I thought. There's a lot of women that read apocalyptic fiction. And again, I'm not talking about the zombie kind of, even though that's a very popular kind of subgenre,
right.
But they really like that kind of survival story. And then when you're looking at kind of subgroups of people, clearly preppers and survivalists are really big into that space. They also read it not just from an entertainment standpoint, but also they look at it, can they learn any new skill set? Is there a scenario then they can read about, then they can plan for, that kind of thing. And so they find value in the books.
Can you teach preppers about classification of what they've got? Because I love that preppers love to tell you what they got. Because I'm like, you're number one on the list, brother. You're gonna be gone.
Well, there's
there's a problem, and I know Sid the Mormon's got all the wheat. Guess who just died?
there are a lot of, they're very gear oriented kind of, but a lot of them are actually, they're just as diverse kind of group of people as you would find anybody, by the way. But yes, I know what you're saying. Like, don't go and tell everybody you've got everything.
I've got treated water.
Exactly. I'm coming to your house.
Or not.
But outside of that, I think the space, there's definitely, because I have a lot of military in the books, like the Marine Corps is heavily represented in a lot of the books that I do. Yeah. So I definitely get a lot of, Marines and veterans reading the books and things like that, which is always fun. And what's interesting, there was a part in the first, I just had a guy come to my house. He was helping me do something. He's a vet. I think he was with 6 Marines over at Lejeune. And he read the entire series. And he was like, oh my God, this is, it's so, I can't, he just got out recently. He's like, it's so real. And it's just kind of the banter back and forth with the Marines and just how they're communicating with each other and how they taught and all that stuff. He was loving it. He's like, it's so legitimate. And I said, how do you feel about the part because there's a scene in the first book where there's a mutiny essentially. And I said, how do you feel about that? He goes, I totally can see that go down. And essentially in a nutshell, what happens is that there's this ARG that's coming back after the super EMP is detonated. And essentially everything's collapsing, right? And so you have these Marines are being told they have to go somewhere else and help in this one area where they know their families are threatened, right? And that creates this fracture within inside the unit. And so you have essentially we're not going over to there. We're going back home to take care of our families. Like we do in the military so we can, be forwardly deployed and protect the homeland. Now the homeland is under threat. And we're going home now. And some people, what's interesting, the people that took opposition to that kind of plot line were people that weren't in the military. That was any people that gave me 1-star reviews because I was like, I can't believe he has these traitors, treasonous Marines. That's bullshit. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. It's hold on. And it's always the Marines or anything. It's like, I could totally see that shit go down. I'm like, yeah.
Absolutely. Because we'll eat our own for breakfast, man. If you fuck it up in that regard.
And that did happen. That's the Civil War, right?
Well, let's see.
Where was the Marine Corps during the Civil War? I've asked that question.
We captured John Brown.
Yeah.
That was it. That was basically it. John Brown. That was the big thing that the Marine Corps did.
There was so I've had some complaints about that one plot line, but whenever I've been posed with it, I go, I actually pulled from history in that regard. I said only twice in America, 3 times, you count the War of 1812, but you have a major conflict on the American soil where the homesteads are actually threatened. Yeah. And whenever you have those instances, you had a lot of people just saying, I'm out. I'm out. During in Washington's army, he had a lot of people just pack up and leave because the Canadian forces came across and were threatening people in Vermont and things like that. Those people packed up and went home. And the same thing in the Confederate army, the Lee's army in Northern Virginia. Once you had Sherman, plowing through and Sheridan doing his thing in Virginia, but Sherman plowing through, a lot of those Georgia units and Mississippi units, they were we're out. We're heading home. Yeah. The homestead's is threatened. My family, my wife, they're out. And they took off. I said, so there's a precedent for that. So imagine you had a major event happen, right? What would happen? I said, it would cause a lot of stress within the military. You're being asked to go over here, but your wife and family are there and shit's hit the fan. It's a jump ball, I think, man.
Especially if you have some wealth. You have something. You're like, okay, I'm getting paid $50 a month to be a Marine, but if you are talking about losing your entire livelihood back at home, you're going to do what you can to protect that because it's a way bigger loss for you.
Well, I think even just people that don't have. Well, I think just if you just have family.
Okay.
I think if you have your wife sitting back, living in say Oceanside or wherever you were married, and now you're being deployed to the East Coast because after this massive nationwide event. There's riots and there's all kinds of bloodletting and chaos happening in the streets, and law enforcement, EMS can't respond because the event's so massive. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the military to make these people are going to be making decisions. What do I do? Who's protecting my wife and kids at home?
Oh, I'm thinking too, as you're telling the story and using this balance of narrative. what you're reading or you read before you started writing, or what you read, obviously great knowledge base of history. What do you read when you write something like this? People automatically assume I only read this type of material. What do you read?
I read it kind of. I like science fiction, by the way. So I've always loved apocalyptic fiction.
You write
too.
what you read.
Yeah. And what's funny, I got started writing the first book because I was reading a guy's book, William Forshine. He wrote a book called 1 Second After, and it's kind of another EMP kind of story. I liked it, but what I found, there was something lacking in it. And I remember, I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I wanted to see something more of an epic kind of. It's a great book, but it was just taking place kind of more in like this community in North Carolina. And I was like, what if you had an event similar to that, but you could see these different point of views, like one person's in the hall of government, one person's in the military and they're forwardly deployed. And how are they struggling with something like that? And then the family dealing with it. And so I wanted to create these different point of view characters so the reader gets to see what's happening around the world and just getting a different perspective. And that's when I decided I was going to write the end.
But it's all based on good, hard research, not just Googling things.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's. I mean, there's a research on what an EMP can do,
Right.
And the actual real effects that it can, and the threat that it actually. I mean, look at our grid, man. Our grid.
Your research also equates not just reading, but talking to people, finding
Absolutely,
exactly what
yeah,
they do.
yeah.
Boots on the ground.
Yep, I remember talking to a guy for the when I was talking about nuclear power stations and what happens with them. If you have a grid down scenario, most people think, well, the nuclear power station just generates its own power. Well, it doesn't work like that. So once if the grid were to collapse, every nuclear power plant could potentially become a meltdown scenario for the United States if it's not turned back on within a certain amount of time. If there's an EMP and then the EMP not just takes down the grid, but also takes down all the redundant and backup kind of power generation systems, nuclear power plants could be, we'd be having some serious trouble, specifically looking like east of the Mississippi where there's just all these nuclear power plants. You can not just at the plant itself, but just also in the containment and storage of the actual spent rods.
That's not sci-fi.
No, this is real.
This is absolutely real stuff. And we talk about that a lot, and we've had Greg Daddis on the show, Professor Chapman, a friend of ours, and do a lot of panel discussions with legendary warfighters and H.R. McMaster, former NSA. What is the most credible threat? And we talk for hours and hours and hours about, platoons getting ambushed in Afghanistan or the Horn of Africa or Iraq and Afghanistan. And at the end of everything, what's the biggest threat? Cyber, electronic attack. That is our biggest, most credible threat to national security right now. So when you write about these things, it's a fantasy world for most people reading it, or a what if scenario, but it's absolutely a reality if we don't protect ourselves. And four guys sitting around here who spent their entire lives as protectors turned entertainers, basically, but sharing those stories and the what ifs, I think, is really important, because what do they say? Art imitates life, or vice versa. I don't know how the adage goes specifically, but I think that's really interesting when you look at it through that lens. Is you're writing about these things, but in modern times, who'd have thought communicating with the flip phone as we're watching Star Trek and every day now?
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Truth is stranger than fiction is another one,
and not just a threat. That cyber thing's a reality. Just maybe a month ago, there's a company, primarily an internet-based company, that someone allowed some badware into the network, and that company basically does not exist right now. Their website is gone. All of their data destroyed. All of their ability. The only people that can really work right now, and think about this, are the engineers who are trying to unfuck what's totally fine.
But if any of us went onto the street today and asked anyone in San Diego if what's a bigger loss to the United States military or our national security, if a platoon of Marines got killed in an ambush or blown up in an IED, is that a bigger loss than having a Harvard grad who defected and went and works for China now and is drinking a chai tea latte in her high-rise in Shanghai attacking our network? Which is a bigger loss? Most would probably say 30 Marines dying in an ambush. Really? In the grand scheme of things? And no one would ever want to see that scenario happen.
And this is a financial services company, right? So you attack the financial
absolutely.
network, and they just took down the entire company. It's
Well, see,
gone.
this is the perfect time to be asking that question, because you could go down to Comic-Con and you can get a colorful array of answers on that one, because they know every aspect that could possibly go to. Those are the people down there. Those are the science fiction people.
It's hard for most Americans to conceptualize that.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to think about it either, because most people don't want to think about something bad happening. And also they think it won't happen. A lot of people live in kind of a normalcy bias, kind of a bubble, right? That something bad will never really happen.
We don't know how good we have it. And I just came back from Mexico with Save the Brave on a great fishing trip. And I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. This is something simple that Americans take for granted. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I was parched. I just dried out. I'm walking around. I couldn't find a bottle of water. I'm thinking, there's got to be a vending machine around here. I can jam some pesos in, right? Nope, no vending machines. Just something as simple as that, and everything we take for granted, moving 500 meters to the next ATM to grab our cash, or to grab our coffee, or to grab our food, or whatever, or Amazon boxes being dropped off, non-existent in the majority of the world. And if those systems got attacked...
Well, no, that's why when I wrote the book, The End, if you have an EMP or any kind of grid down scenario, but EMP kind of takes not just the grid, but it takes all electrical devices. Pretty much everything doesn't work, right? But even just have a grid down scenario where vehicles still work, and the grid is down for an extended period of time, society will break down really quickly. Even though we used to be able to survive 100 years ago without it. I mean, think about it. Most homes that have electricity in the 1920s, 1930s. There's only, having electricity in the house is only, it's less than really 100 years old.
Brian, what was like that?
Same as gas.
You didn't have electricity growing up?
Kerosene lamps.
But what's interesting, our dependence on that kind of thing, though, is what causes the breakdown of society. Is people won't sit and be patient. They won't work with one another, right? Their fear turns to panic turns to chaos, and chaos eventually turns to bloodletting, because they don't know how to survive. They don't have the skill set to work with each other, or the skill set to survive without electricity. Even though we've lived as human beings, far longer without electricity, but that itself would bring down society. It would be riots in the street within days.
That's absolutely true, because you think about, like, if it's 103 outside on social media, oh my God, it's 103, it's so hot, so hot, so hot. But we have electricity, we have the ability to cool ourselves. You take that scenario to Iraq or Afghanistan, anywhere else where it sucks, where they don't have reliable power. And I'm talking to the locals, and I'm like, well, what about the government? They're like, how long would your government work without power? And I'm like, about 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And people would start to lose their minds. Yeah. People would get hot and pissed off.
No, and societal breakdown comes from that. Just the volume of people. Law enforcement wouldn't be able to, the military wouldn't be able to handle it. There'd be too many people just riding and taking.
The grid goes down. The first people to exit will be the prisoners. They'll leave the prison system. And do you think that the police is going to be able to handle all of that?
No. Well,
over 1 million prisoners, and all of a sudden, poof, part of now our neighbors.
Well, what's interesting about when I wrote The End, part of the research I did was reading kind of the extensive, comprehensive congressional study about EMPs. And what's interesting is in there, they tell you exactly what they're going to do. If there is an EMP ever were to happen, God forbid, what the government's going to do? They're going to bunker down.
Yeah.
It's called continuity of government. So they know that shit will hit the fan. There's nothing they can really do about it. So they bunker down and essentially let everyone just go fucking crazy. And then they'll fucking clean everything up. Because there's nothing they can do. You have 300 and some million people with no power. And if the military really can't respond adequately, no one can respond adequately, so they're just going to protect the government and then let everyone just freaking go crazy on each other.
Not only no power, no money.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Even if your car does work, eventually you can't get gas out of the ground.
Yeah.
So, eventually everything just stops. Look at grocery stores. Within 3 days, food is gone.
Yeah, last week Target went down.
That's right.
The computer system went down. No one could buy anything.
Yeah, so whether it's an EMP or it's like a malware attack on the grid, when you're using cyber, it'll completely fuck us. Yeah.
We are running low on tortillas the other day, and people were losing their minds.
What was some shit about like Taco Bell or something?
It's like, we're out of tortillas. Hit the panic button.
As a writer and subscriber to all of these different scenarios, without divulging any operational or base security, do you have a contingency plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I became more prepared-minded individual after doing all the research and writing the books. I absolutely.
A lot of revelatory things probably pop up just out of your creativity. And you're like,
I look at being, it's like an insurance policy. Nothing would be worse for me than my little girls look at me if something bad were to happen and go, "What are you going to do? Can you help us?" And if I'm not prepared in some way or have a plan and then the resources and skill sets, I've failed. Actually, I failed. I think it's my responsibility as a man to protect my little girls and protect my family.
We had 2 significant earthquakes in the past 2 weeks.
Yes.
And if that 7 hits 100 miles to the west, it's a whole different scenario.
At that depth, it was pretty shallow. Had that been 100, it would have wrecked a lot of shit, man.
Yeah, you better have a big garbage can full of Spam in the backyard and all that stuff. I mean, no shit, like really, like water and food outside of your house.
Yeah.
Your house may be gone and inaccessible. So yeah.
Well, think about that. Yeah, I mean, literally think about something like that happens today, and it is closer to the coast. Think how many people live between LA and San Diego. What is it? 12 million? I don't know how many million. Think about that.
Yeah, 12
and then
15.
think about all the damage that the grid would be down, guaranteed, for an extended period of time. Right? You can't. And water would probably eventually stop too, because when for the research in the book, I was talking to a lot of these water districts, and most of it's gravity fed. So you see those big kind of holding tanks on the hills, right? Mm-hmm. So when those are positioned nicely so it can gravity feed most communities and things like that. But how does water get up there?
Pump.
Exactly. So when the power goes out, those tanks will only keep feeding the homes until they're dry. And then what? Then you're out of water.
And you got Ricky watering his lawn after the earthquake. You're like, fuck, Ricky! I need that water.
And communications would fail. I mean, communications would fail. Power would go. And then you could be here 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 weeks in Southern California without that stuff.
Yeah.
People would go ape shit.
Yeah, but the thing is that California is far more resourceful. If there was a heavy earthquake somewhere in Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, somewhere like that, they are not prepared for anything like this.
They got us beat on tornadoes, though. You got to admit.
That's true. Oklahoma was going through the series of earthquakes for a while. And so it was becoming too much for them because they were not physically prepared. Here in Orange County, okay, we got it. We know we're not going to have everything's going to be mounted against the walls, this and that. That's just part of our daily life.
Yeah, we definitely I think living out here, I think they've even in building code have improved things to make things more earthquake proof. But I'm talking about you get a sizable enough earthquake. Are people ready to go beyond 3 days, 7 days? Are they really mentally prepared to go 6 weeks without power? What does that mean for a region of the United States that's densely populated? Like 15 million people without power for an extended period of time.
It gets ugly because all of a sudden the people who have solar are going to be taking in the community, and then after a while, people are going to be pissed that someone's got solar.
Ooh.
That's another storyline.
No, it is. No, of course it is.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, those people that have resources, other people are going to come to them.
Yeah.
I've had that. I have it in the book. And eventually then what happens, and then you have conflict. It's natural.
They become mini SDG&Es.
Little warlords.
Cal.
Exactly.
Yeah, Cal
Less power. So your latest novel is called 7 Days, a post-apocalyptic novel. You are G Michael Hopf. Man, awesome. Thanks for coming on to Break It Down.
Yeah, you normally ask, what do you got coming up? But we know 70 books.
70 books. 70 more books.
It was a spoiler alert. Stay tuned for the next 70 more books.
Dig a hole,
pressure.
get the spam in. We're ready.
Yeah, great having you on. Fellow Marine Brothers, Brian, Taylor's second podcast. So she's, second podcast. And Pete, I mean, always great to be co-host on the show with you.
And welcome to South Park.
Yeah. So if you want to find G Michael Hopf again, tell everybody.
Go to gmichaelhopf.com. It's as easy as
And,
that.
and on social media?
Facebook.com/whatever it is, G Michael Hopf.
And you're on Instagram as well.
I'm on Instagram as well. Not on Twitter. I was on Twitter. And
It's a dumpster fire.
It's a shit show. So stay off that.
Yeah.
And RyanDix.com. Nice and simple. Comments spelled IANDIX, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, of course, Echo and Ramadi and P.A. Turner and all social media. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah.